It was attributed to LED lights.
All right.
So, late 21 or early 22, we changed the ordinance
I know.
to be
That's unfortunate.
with wetlands of less than 3,000. We did not apply the buffer. Wetland still exists. The wetland still is the wetland. Wetlands, if you're gonna do anything to the actual wetland, you still need DES, you still need us, all that stuff. It was just the buffer.
Okay. We ready? Good evening. Welcome to the April 5th, 2023 meeting of the Laconia Conservation Commission. We start the meeting off by calling the roll. I'm Dean Anson.
Deb Williams?
Lisa Moran.
Mike Foot.
Stacy Susie?
I'm the planning director, Dean Trefethan.
Zoning, whoops, sorry about that. Conservation Planning Technician Sheena Duncan.
Okay, good. We have a quorum, and we start off by saluting the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, sorry for the delay in starting the meeting. We, computers are here. They're our friends. They're here to help us, just not on April 5th. It's a delayed April Fool's joke, so anyway. It's a lot better than a 30-story parking garage.
Hey, I like that.
And the bridge, I mean, I was literally ready to move. I was so upset. But anyway, it only took 4 days for people to explain it's a joke. But I was in favor of 100 days of motorcycle week. I thought that would be a long week. But anyway, okay.
The nightly moon, you mean?
They changed the name on the paper.
Right.
I know. But see, I didn't start at the top. I start in the back. I check to see if I'm in the obituary. I wasn't there, so that was the good news. And then I read my horoscope, and I read the cartoons, and then I worked my way forward, and I found out way too late that everybody else was in tune and I wasn't, but that's normal. Anyway, we're gonna start this meeting with Cindy O'Connell, who is with the Winnisquam Watershed Network, and she's going to explain the project at Gale Avenue. So, Cindy, it's yours. So Cindy will do a presentation, and then I would assume that it's Cindy's show, but I don't know whether she wants you to hold your questions until the end, or
If you would, please. This is brief. There we go. Okay, it's back. Good evening, commissioners and Mr. Chairman. As Dean mentioned, my name is Cindy O'Connell. I'm the program manager for the Winnisquam Watershed Network. Also, the only paid staff person, which is why I'm here tonight instead of somebody else. I was hoping Amy Levisick was going to be here as well, but
Amy was called away last minute. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
all right. Anyway, as many of you know, Amy Levisick is the Facilities Director for Parks and Recreation. What I wanted to do for the commissioners who may or may not be familiar with the Winnisquam Watershed Network is give you a little bit of an idea of who we are. So the organization was founded in 2017 by Lisa Eggleston, who some of you have met, I think, at previous meetings. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the mission of which is to protect the water quality of Lake Winnisquam. The group has a number of volunteer organizations, people who do water testing like Dean does, people who paddle around the lake watching for invasive weeds. We do have a pretty extensive invasive weed and animal elimination program that is funded by the network itself, as well as 5 of the towns that have land within the watershed. So a lot of people are contributing to especially the milfoil removal, and that's been quite a successful program. We also financially sponsor the Lake Coast program, in addition to New Hampshire Lakes and funding from New Hampshire DES. And that's a very important program for our lake's water quality. Over the last 3 years, the Winnisquam Watershed Network has been working with the EPA and New Hampshire DES to create a watershed-based plan for the entire lake. We were lucky enough to be given funding by the EPA and by a Moose Plate grant in order to be able to hire a couple of consultants to help prepare the plan. We hired FB Environmental, or actually I guess the EPA hired FB Environmental and Horsley Witten Group. A watershed-based plan is a very substantial inventory of the land within the watershed, what kind of development exists now, what kind of development might exist in the future, what the land uses are that would be allowed, so a review of all of the planning and zoning regulations in all of the towns that have land in the watershed. And one of the elements of this plan, which was completed last summer in July of 2022 and has been approved by the EPA, was a list of high priority sites for some kind of remediation. The Gale Avenue Park site made the top 25. And there was a public meeting in August of 2021 with members of various city committees and with members of the public to talk about what could possibly happen at Gale Avenue. The other thing about the watershed plan is that its approval by the EPA gives the stakeholders in the watershed and organizations like the Winnisquam Watershed Network access to grant funding through the EPA. There are a number of different programs that are available. Some of them are for watershed plans, some of them are for more specific construction projects. And the grant programs, for whatever reason, are named after sections of the Clean Water Act. So the grant that we are currently operating under is called a 319 grant, which is from Section 319 of the Clean Water Act. It is specifically for the design and construction of 3 different stormwater management solutions for 3 of the highest priority sites that were identified by the watershed plan. So our current project is the first implementation phase of the watershed plan. There are 3 sites, as you can see from the graphic: Gale Avenue, Deer Park Association in Meredith, and an area of Callback Road in Sanborn. All 3 of these sites were identified in the top 25 high priority sites as part of the watershed plan. And part of the
So sorry. I cannot.
man, it's conspiring against me, the world of technology. In any case, the Winnisquam Watershed Network was awarded a grant through the EPA and New Hampshire DES for 60% of the total cost of design and construction of these 3 sites. The other 40% of the cost, based on some very elaborate spreadsheets that were done as far as, you know, what it was gonna cost to do these projects. The other 40% is an in-kind match that can be professional design assistance, can be labor provided by one of the towns, can be materials provided by one of the towns. I don't think we're gonna have trouble getting to the 40%, and that's the overall project cost for all three sites. But it's not just free money, it's free money plus some responsibility to make a contribution. So the Gale Avenue site, all right, now I can't find the pointer. We'll bring a pointer just in case. But now I'm trying to figure out what I should be pointing at.
Go ahead and zoom it in, so
Well,
zooms right in on the red area.
does that help? Can you see that? No.
Here.
Can I get it up there? Whoa. All right, I can see the dot all around it. Can't see the dot on the screen. Okay. Sometimes
Can you
these
just move your
things-
cursor over it, Cindy?
I can, there should be a pointer.
There you go.
All right, what do you think?
Good.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. Big red dot. And a big red circle. Okay, so the project site is at the western end of Gale Avenue. This is Gale Avenue, going this way. It's owned by the city. It's a small parcel. It's only about 2/10 of an acre, and it has about 80 feet of waterfront right on Winnisquam. During rain events, what happens is the stormwater that's created by the pavement on Gale Avenue and, you know, by driveways and other runoff winds up, rather than in the subsurface drainage system, is winding up in a surface swale that travels in this direction and discharges the stormwater just about at this point. Okay, can I get my pointer back again? Yes, no? Yes. No, maybe not. Yes.
There you
Okay, so we're standing in the park and the water is coming in this direction on the surface, flowing across the site towards the lake. And what's happening, whoops, too far. Go back. What's happening is the velocity of the water is so strong that it's created these quite deep eroded channels on both sides of the site. And so not only is it picking up sediment from the road and from that surface swale that I showed you a minute ago, it's picking up sediment all through both of these swales and carrying it down to the shoreline, where it's eroding the bank in every direction and pulling a lot of that sediment right into the lake itself. So if we go back to this site, this slide, if you look closely, you can see that there's a silt delta that has formed just from all the sediment that's being pulled off the site. So that is what identified the site as one that was high priority and that we might want to look at for some remediation. Because the sediment that is winding up in the lake carries with it nutrients and pollutants from car exhaust, from whatever might, salt or whatever treatment might have happened to the road. All of those chemicals are being captured by the sediment that carries them into the lake. Phosphorus is a particular item of concern because it's one of the big contributors to toxic algae blooms in the summer. So this is the conceptual plan that was included in the watershed-based plan. And what the plan for the future is basically these elements. So there would be, at the very beginning, where the water discharges from Gale Avenue, there would be something called a sediment forebay, which is a place where the sediment gets slowed down and the material that's used would allow the sediment to be cleaned out and removed periodically in accordance with an annual maintenance guide. This other piece here is a shallow depression, generally called a bioretention basin or a rain garden. Rain gardens tend to be a little bit of a misnomer because you don't always plant them with flowering species or elaborate plantings that need very specific kinds of maintenance. The UNH Stormwater Center, which is the leader in its field, has done a lot of look backs at different kinds of bioretention basins, and their conclusion is that maintenance is really critical, and if the people who are meant to maintain it do not want to have to deal with flowering plants and whatever special things you have to do, they just want to mow it, a grass bioretention area removes almost as much pollutants as something that's more elaborately planted. So maintenance is always a concern with these things. They look great when you first put them in, but you want them to be maintained appropriately. So on the north side of the property, the basin would be graded so that the outlet would be in this location, and there would be a stabilized swale, probably planted, possibly with some step pools that would outlet, further down into the lake. The swale on this side, the existing eroded swale, would be regraded and revegetated. So this one on the southerly side would be eliminated. Shoreline stabilization is something that is probably a future task, and I know that the Parks and Recreation Department has some ideas about how they want to deal with the shoreline on the park, but that's not part of this grant program. As far as what's going to happen coming up, we don't have detailed design for the park at this point because we still need to do some data collection. There's going to be soil testing and some survey work done. We have hired an engineering consultant, and they will probably spend a day doing a combination of survey and soil testing. So they're, at some point, probably before the end of April, hopefully before the end of April, you may see a backhoe at the end of Gale Ave just for the soil testing. Some of the survey work may be done by a drone that the consultant uses. They assured me that the drone would remain on the public property. If it comes across any faces or license plates, it automatically blurs them out. So, nobody's privacy will be invaded. But I wanted to make the commission and the neighborhood aware that something is going to happen, hopefully within the next month or so. I'm happy to take questions from the commission and from residents if they have questions for me as well. I may or may not be able to answer them, but I'll do my best.
Thank you. Okay, Dean, when Winnisquam Watershed Network gets ready to do, when they do their more detailed design and they're prepared to, before they start work, do they come here and get a permit?
That's a good question. I- Under the state law, the city is exempt from its own rules. Good, bad, or indifferent. However, we do try to follow the process as best we can so that people are aware of what's going on. So while it may not be a formal permit that needs to be issued, you certainly would want to have a advisory session of what the final plan is and take public comment and react to any concerns that are presented.
Okay, so is this considered a city project, or is this a,
My understanding is it's being done in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department, so it
Okay.
would be.
It's on city property.
It's on city property. I mean, we own the property, so just like any other property, we require the owner of the property to be the applicant. They may appoint an agent, but the owner of the property needs to do the application.
okay,
So yes, that would be a city project. Now, we are not exempt from DES, so obviously, we're within the 250-foot mark of the shoreline here. So there may or may not need to be a DES permit. My guess is there needs to be something, permit by notification, or I don't know exactly what level that it'll rise to, but we certainly will help with that.
Part of the scope for the engineering consultant is a meeting with all the various factions of DES to make sure that we understand what kind of permitting they're gonna be requiring for each of the sites.
Yep.
That would be the goal. We'll see how that goes.
okay. Lisa?
No, do you have a question? Can I just follow up on that?
Sure.
I did read that some grants actually require a paper trail. Some are more particular than others.
And that's fine, we can do that. I mean, it's, we can write memos, we can bring an application in as an advisory application. You can do your advise on it, and so we can do that. That's not a problem. We've had that in the past.
And we are on record with a letter of support from Amy.
Yeah.
That was part of our grant application.
Great.
So there's some.
I know some cities have found out after the fact that they should have had some stuff done just to make sure that the grant was 100% compliant.
I guess the way I would picture this is, this is the initial informational meeting for the community and for us as a commission. And the next meeting would be when you get a more detailed design. We would do the same thing. We'd notify the community so that they could come and participate. That's because I think it's important for the community to be involved and for the commission to be involved. So,
What about the planning board?
I'm sorry?
What about the planning board?
Stacy is the liaison, is that right? From the planning board, she's on the planning board.
Okay. I mean, would
I
it be
think you've already been to the planning board
I
in
was at the
August.
planning board about the watershed plan,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because this
and
looked very
I'm sure I
familiar.
mentioned this
Yeah.
because it was in Laconia.
So, I mean.
I'm just wondering, as far as detailed plans
Tec-
go.
Technically, we do not need a CUP because we're exempt, but, so there not be a need to go to the planning board. But if you wanted to go to the planning board from an advisory standpoint, again, that would be your option. But technically, since there's no CUP required, because it's city
think
property.
when we have the next meeting, we should invite the planning board. If they want to participate, they can. If they choose not to, that's their choice.
You can do
But-
it that way too.
That
Yeah.
sounds reasonable.
So, Lisa,
So if you could share with us the documentation from the Stormwater Center about your findings on the rain garden, because that is not the conventional wisdom that I'm aware of regarding the vegetation and types of vegetation and maintenance. And also, when you do the soil testing, I was a little surprised to hear needing a backhoe, but there again, I could be ignorant of the type of soil testing they're doing. So if you could let me know about
Yeah.
that too.
The purpose of the soil testing is to understand how permeable the soil is. So how fast is it going to go through the
It's the
retention
backhoe
basin?
part of it.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that there are a couple of subsurface, there's a sewer line and a drainage line that run through the middle of this park, they're gonna have to be very careful
Right.
about what they're doing. We have been coordinating with Amy about having one of the DPW backhoes provide the service for us. I don't think that they would be going down any further than like one good bucket. You know, it's not like there's gonna be a massive hole.
I was just curious, because it was not, it's not a tool that I'm used to having be used with a soil test, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you could follow up with the maintenance.
Yeah, I know I have the stormwater center stuff somewhere. It might take me a little while to find it.
That's okay. Like I said, that is not, that goes against the conventional wisdom I'm familiar with, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
okay. Anybody in the public like to speak? And if you would you please come to the microphone and give us your name? And I assume that you're from Laconia, but if you could tell us that too, please.
Hi, my name is Mark Townsend, and I'm from 47. My question is about the swales. They are not from consistent erosions. Sometimes leaves sit in there for years, and they're have been extreme weather events that have turned Gale Avenue into a river that rapidly tore out a lot out of there. And my question is, what research has been done on that, a meteorologic history? Is that what part of the soil testing is? I don't want these rain gardens and stuff to work really well and then get torn out when we have 5 inches of rain or something like that. And I don't know if that's research that's already been done or if that's coming up or whatever. And there was not a backhoe digging in there, but if you see grass missing, that's because last year there's a backhoe because the property next to the park had a retention wall rebuilt. So if you're wondering why the grass is missing, it's because of a backhoe. Oh, they took down the fence so it wouldn't be damaged, and I think they put down some things to protect the soils so it wouldn't get it dug up and torn up by the backhoe. But there's been a backhoe in there already. But I was just wondering what research has already been done and what research is still gonna be done about what caused the erosion to create those swales. And I guess the city has records. If you look in the swales, it looks like there's some kind of flat stones in there, like that was built up at some time in the past. So I presume, I hope somebody has a record of what's already in there, and you won't have to do as many soils samples if you see the charts and the graphs of what's already been done.
Thank you, Mark.
My understanding of the soil testing that's going to take place this spring is that it's going to be limited to the area of the proposed basin. They're not going to go all over the site digging holes. You know, one or two maybe. What they're really looking for is the permeability of the soil, the way you would look for a leach field. How fast is the water going to go through? Which is one of the criteria for how big you need something to be. How fast is it going to drain? And you were wondering about storm intensity. The engineers will be using a lot of rainfall data that's being collected constantly. And one of the things that people are realizing is that there are more intense storms with more rainfall more frequently than there used to be. So anything that gets designed for stormwater management, they're looking at the projections. So in a 25-year storm, how many inches of rain are coming out of the sky? In a 50-year storm, and you know, all of those kind of periods are getting closer together, because you know, when you hear WMUR say, oh, it was a 100-year storm and we had one last week too, they're getting closer together than they used to be. But it's the engineer's responsibility to look at all the rainfall data and create calculations to anticipate what kind of volume is being collected. It also goes to, you know, how far up Gale Ave, like what is the actual area that's contributing to the water that's flowing
I
on
can
the site.
tell you that, it's
Right.
up the Pleasant Street.
Well, in any case, that's something that they're gonna be looking at too. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question, I just want to say congratulations on getting the grant.
Oh, thank you.
That's fabulous.
We were pretty excited about it.
I would be too, yeah.
And then we realized, oh, we have to come up with 40% of it.
Well, yeah, yeah.
But we're working on that too. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the commission for giving me the time to make this presentation. And thank you, Sheena, for getting the computers et al. To work.
Apologize for the inconvenience.
All right, so I'm just taking my flash drive out, and I can send
you.
this to you.
Before you go,
Whoop.
our meetings are recorded and they're on YouTube. So you can go and you can tell your neighbors that they can go and see what transpired here, so that, you know, because I think it's important, as I said before, that the community be involved, so you know what's going on. You know, no jungle gyms, you know, none of those kinds of things, swing sets, that's not included here. This is an environmental project to prevent further erosion and to preserve the water quality of the lake. So please tell your neighbors, encourage them to go to YouTube and watch this, and we're on every roughly every 2 weeks we're on, so if you're really bored, or if you're not bored. So, thank you for coming out.
And we'll be back again when we have a detailed plan.
And we'll let you know, I think Cindy and Amy let you know via email. We'll do the same thing again, and we'll post notices in the paper and on the city website, so you know what's going on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks, Dean.
Okay, Bob.
How y'all doing? My name's Bob Gallagher. I don't know if you have
Thank you.
iPad enough, but this is a copy of our plan.
Thank you for coming tonight, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got one for Dean and Shane. You got one
Of course, I didn't know how many to bring, but,
You got one for yourself?
well, I got the 2x3s.
Okay, all right.
And I'm sure I actually have more copies, but, I guess that's, everybody can see that, they don't need to see this one, or?
Right,
So,
right.
all right. I'll use this one then. Anyway, just to introduce myself, I'm Bob Gallagher, and I have a property here in Laconia. So I approached the city to purchase this lot, and we're under contract. So what we're trying to do is to just do a small development, a small project, to put a 5,000 square foot building up towards the front of the property, up towards the edge of Lexington. And then have a passage road just to get back into a little bit of the middle of the property, to have an area where we can, you know, like a storage site where you could put like shipping containers or stuff that you don't want to be visible from the street, and possibly like a 3,000, 3,200 square foot storage, cold storage building, which would be maybe 8 bays, 12 foot wide by 30 foot deep, with the possibility of some of them being, you know, rentals to, you know, like contractors who need a place to park a work truck where they can't park at their condo complex or in their property. There's a real shortage of space around the city for doing that.
Excuse me, sir, I apologize. Can you bring me to where exactly we are? Like, where are we in relation to the gas station in the corner and all that?
Okay, so,
I'm sorry.
all right, yes, sure. So if you're looking at the, if you look at the site plan this way, on the, well, it's probably not as obvious, on the, this side here is Smith Tube, and this side here is the Viant property. So the gas station is down here.
Okay,
So you come in from 106, take a left, gas station's on your right. The first, this property here is Viant. Well, actually, no, I take that back. The first property is the new red building. Then you have Viant.
okay,
Then there's this property,
okay,
and then Smith Tube,
okay,
which is the one next to it.
thank you.
So the area has a fair amount of wetland, but it's not really wetland, as, you know, it's not like a big standing swamp with, it's really mostly been built by runoff from the Smith Tube parking lot. All along the Smith Tube property, there's, on the plan, it shows there's a man-made swale that collects a lot of the runoff out of the parking lot. And then that's been diverted in a couple of directions, and then it flows down through the site. And that's kind of what made most of this wet. So what we're basically doing, we're not actually in the wetland in any way, except we're just gonna make a crossing with a culvert. And the section where we're gonna put the driveway across is not really, it's mostly wet when the water is flowing from a rainstorm. Other than that, it just dries out. So it's not, as I said, not swampy or anything. In essence, we're in a couple places where we're getting into the 50-foot setbacks by the front building, the 5,000 square foot building, which is 50 by 100. And again, we're not into the wetland, we're just getting a little close in a few spots. And then the same thing when we get up in the back midsection of the property, we've got a couple places where we're less than the 50-foot setback, but we're not actually in the wetland. And again,
this is fairly steeply sloped land, so while it was flagged as wetland, it's not, it's just water runs through it. It's not anything that holds water. Not sure what else I can really tell you. I have a small manufacturing company, which I'm planning to move into the building. It's a small machine shop, and mostly for my personal use. As I said, we may try to have some sort of space available for rent if there's any extra room that I'm not using, or as I go more towards retirement and decide to do less, then maybe make more space available. In the cold storage building, I'd probably keep like a couple bays for my own junk, and as I said, try to rent out maybe 5 or 6 bays to provide some space. So basically, we came to find out what your thoughts were on the project. We're dealing with a little bit of a man-made drainage trench that runs parallel to Lexington right at the edge of the road. Again, that was man-made. And then, as I said, there's all that and then the path which goes across along the parking lot. You can see there's drainage pipes that are actually coming under the parking lot that are actually dumping onto the property. And those are being caught in this man-made swale, which over time has actually filled up with silt and stuff because it hasn't been maintained. And in fact, where you see it cross around here is where the drainage swale is actually filled up and sort of overflowed. So it became level, so as the water now it comes up and comes across where I think it originally was intending to go all the way up to the road and then go down the front. So that's kind of where the crossing is. So our plan would be to put a culvert in there and then just go across. And the only reason we're even going across is this is almost a 5-acre site, and we're really trying to do something with it with minimal impact. Any questions, or?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm looking to see where, do you have a parking?
Yeah, the parking, oh, yeah, it's a little, so the parking is, I probably should have. So there's parking here.
Yeah.
Our use is warehouse manufacturing, so it really don't need a lot of spaces. And then we've set it up so there's like 2 curb cuts here to give a place where a truck can come in and get off the street, you know, to be unloaded. And there's room in here for some space. And then, so I don't think we really have to, we don't need a lot of parking, and we're not required to, you know, by zoning. And as I said, if we really had an issue, we could just park.
So you don't have any parking in the back, by the back building?
Well, this is all open, so you have the building is here.
Oh, I see.
And this is all open, so yes,
Gotcha.
this is all parking.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you have a non-functioning swale, basically.
Right. Well, it functions, it just doesn't, it's full at this point, which is what's generating this cross point. In other words, it's intact down to here, but this is where it's built up with sediment.
How much culvert were you thinking of encasing this drainage in?
Which one, here?
Well, you said, I thought what you were thinking was replacing the swale with a culvert
Oh,
and
no,
dumping the water.
No, we're not gonna, we're actually, that might just need to be cleaned out and maintained. So it's
Okay.
nothing but a ditch that's filled in with trees and leaves and debris, so that would just need to be cleaned. It's not,
It was
but the culvert,
yeah.
here we're putting a culvert across so we can get a driveway across. So we'd need DS approval for
Okay,
this.
that was not what I interpreted, thank you.
Okay. And then we are putting a culvert down along the road in the section so we can get the 2 curb cuts just to come across.
Okay.
But that's, as I said, that's all man-made, that's just,
Okay.
So are you taking over maintenance of that, of the swale?
I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that, we haven't clarified that. I have to talk to the other property owners to see, because it's on this property, but it's actually their swale.
Their drainage.
Their
Well,
drainage,
yeah.
their water, so,
I,
if not, I mean, we'll have to do it. But,
So it's Smith Tubes.
Smith too, yeah.
yeah, I'm just thinking you might end up having to take care of it,
Well,
so.
it's actually not that big a deal.
Right, and so, that being said, it probably does provide you with some flood protection from his parking lot, so.
Yeah, there's not, this is all downhill, but there actually isn't a lot of cross flow here. It's
Oh.
really, this is catching, this along the parking lot is catching the flow, as I said. And it would ordinarily, it appears, come all the way down to here. This is the only place that it's not, and it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna plan on putting a culvert in and allowing for the flow to then move it down into the broader area.
So given that you're so, I'm sorry, can I still retain the floor there, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry?
Can I still retain the floor?
Sure,
I didn't mean to. So given, this is going to be a paved surface?
No, that's gonna be dirt. We're not going to, the only part that's gonna be paved is down around this building.
Okay.
This would be just a gravel driveway.
And
and
how often
all
is
gravel.
that gonna need to be accessed? And where I'm going with this is protecting the wetland.
Right.
So if it's not paved,
Mhm.
it's going to be subject to some erosion, some dust, even if it's not wet, some dust, seasonal issues, and, I guess if you pave it though, then you're also thinking of salting, so I'm just trying to get a sense of
I don't envision.
what we need to do for this
That area
wetland.
being something that is like heavily traveled. It's not something I'm envisioning. It's more of a static, somebody might show up, once a day, twice a day. As I said, it's not something I'm envisioning as being an active, really active site.
And this is the cold storage, you're saying?
Right, that's just cold. No, you'll have electricity, but no heat, and it won't be for people to do work out back.
Oh, I misinterpreted cold storage too. I thought it was gonna be like refrigerated
No,
storage.
like a
Okay.
No, like
Well-
a storage
Depends on the
building
time of
that you
year.
can
Thinking
store
trees.
With a bunch of bays, but
That's
they'll
right.
just be
I see.
unheated
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
places, for a contractor to, park his excess material or park a truck maybe,
Thank you.
that they couldn't keep on site.
Thank you.
But I'm not looking, as I said, there's not a lot of room, so I'm not
Right.
So-
planning on it being a big active site.
So will the parking lot in front of the cold storage be paved?
No, that'd be gravel too.
Okay.
Will there be drains in the buildings?
No, I wouldn't put drains in a building anyways. That way if there's something I don't envision anything gets spilt, but I don't like drains in buildings. That just goes bad.
Okay, I have, in the wetland area, there are arrows.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that those arrows, although I make a lot of assumptions, indicate the direction of water flow?
Pitch, yeah.
Okay.
It's not actually a stream, it's just.
Right,
the
that's,
engineer just put it on so you know what direction the water, when it rains, is gonna go, yes.
What do these symbols mean?
I think those are just elevation when they were doing the topo. So I think it's where they took the readings. I'm
Okay.
not sure what that one, I'm not an engineer or just,
Okay. It looks like a Secchi disc, that's what
well,
I
it's
mean,
a-
that's not what it is, but, yeah.
well, test pit, test pits.
A
that's what it-
test pit,
test
okay.
pits, yes. The
There
site
you
had
go.
been, had test pits back probably 20 years ago, so.
Okay.
And they actually have, the engineer who's doing the work, their company actually was involved in it way back when it was originally all developed and subdivided and stuff, so they had actually test pits.
Okay, thank you.
did you see the information on the test pits in terms of what was the soil condition? Is
Yeah,
there-
it's just regular gravel, there's no ledge, no
buried.
rock, no. We did a couple of test pits up at the very front, last fall, and basically you had like a couple feet of loam. There's an area where it humps up, and it looks like way back then, what they probably did is stockpile a pile of loam that was screened, figuring they're gonna come back to it and just dozed it out, because one side there's 2 feet of loam, the other side there's like 4 or 5 feet of loam. And that would obviously be removed where the building is, but there's no rocks in it, no nothing. And then you get down to sandy gravel.
Okay, so I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, can you move the cold storage building toward Lexington Drive?
You'd be
It'll be
And-
closer to the,
and shorten the length of the road.
Well, we could, we just didn't want to get into the wetlands, so
yeah,
we
you'll
were
be,
right,
you'll
right.
be
Go right
closer
into
to
the
the
wetland.
Yeah.
I know, but, so that brings me to my second question,
Sure.
which is, so you're gonna have a portion of this property, maybe 40% of this property, that's not gonna be developed. Would
Right.
you be willing to turn that into conservation?
It depends which part you're talking about.
I'm
or-
talking about the back part here. So if you were to make this plot,
Well, we had looked at, I'm not sure if I'd want to come this far, but this line here, this was turned into conservation over here, this very back section of Viant. And we were saying we could, you know, I would definitely draw this line if you carry it straight across, because this here we know is an issue. This, not really, I don't envision that I would ever use it. I just don't necessarily know if I'd want to commit to it if, down the road, if some, you know, at this point. But there's nothing, this isn't wet here.
right,
As I said, but
Oh.
this section here is definitely, would be something we would.
yeah,
How
so,
big is this lot
looking for-
overall?
It's 4.89 acres, I think.
So it'd be hard to put it in conservation because it's of a certain size. I
Well-
want 10 acres.
right, but we can put it in, Mr. Gallagher could identify it as conservation area, not a conservation easement.
Yeah.
A conservation area not to be developed and, you know, I think there's a way of doing it so it's not in perpetuity.
Yeah, it would be,
But-
something like this would be, you know, this is 3/4 of an acre,
Mm-hmm.
if we drew that line going across.
and there's a
And
wet
it's already,
stream or something
they're
through
already
there.
dumping from Smith Tube water down across it, so.
Right,
So what? Sorry.
So basically, if you,
Now, what
yeah,
motivated
this
you to,
line here.
what motivated you to mark that out?
Well, there's already flow coming down through.
Oh, I see.
It's beyond where we would get into anyways.
Yeah.
I just don't want to block off this
Yeah.
section here prematurely because, as I said, I have no
Fine.
vision for doing anything with it. I
Mr.
don't
Chair.
know, down the road, if I have to sell the property to somebody else might want to come back in for.
right, right,
So-
but if it's, I mean, I don't know whether, there's probably a condition under which you could cut off a portion of the property and put it into conservation.
I could give you an easement or a deed that says we wouldn't develop it or build on
Right.
it or interfere with it. Yeah,
Right.
leave it in its natural state, sure.
Because I think that area, the water from that area is connected all the way down to the wetland
I agree
along
with you.
106
It is,
in,
yes.
yeah,
And the project that Smith Tube did for the back parking lot is diverting a lot of water through, so.
right.
And where you draw the line straight across, pretty much takes that whole section, you know, that's being used for that, and that's perfect. And that's why I don't see how to do, you know, it makes sense, I have no problem with that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do we know if there's language for the easement that's already existing on the abutting parcel? I don't know if that's 10 acres or more that's in conservation, but it was just stated that this was conservation, or is conservation land. So I'm wondering if there's a way to,
Combine the two and,
well, borrow the language so that they match up, so that we're not creating a different document that says something different from the land, the way it's being managed here, for the being managed here, if indeed we want to give it some conservation value. Having those two parcels abutting and in the same type of management makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
I think that the thing that's really important for this area is that the water coming off further up Lexington comes down
Yes.
and winds up along 106. And, you know, to keep that area as a water storage area to prevent flooding of 106.
Oh, I agree with you. I guess what I was just wondering if there was existing language that would help direct
I
what
don't,
we're
I don't know, is there an
looking.
existing language?
Have no idea. I mean, we can certainly research that and see when that came about. You know, this is a 50-plus-year-old industrial park, and the standards of development that were very different, although not every parcel was developed 50 years ago. So we may have something and we may not, I don't know.
So maybe it would make sense to see if we can, because I think adjacent to the gas station there, I think that is a conservation easement.
Where the Phragmites grows?
Yeah, where the Phragmites grows. I think that, because I remember a long time ago trying to walk through that.
Ticks much?
No, we didn't have a problem with ticks. We were like up to our knees in muck.
We didn't have ticks then.
That's right, that's right. That was, they hadn't evolved yet. They were still dinosaurs.
I just have something, if I may. We're looking at our industrial park. We're looking at area that in zoning wants to be utilized for light industrial, all these other types of things. You know, we do shipping in here and everything like that. I understand and I can accept the whole idea of protecting the flow on the way through. If it comes to something like that, that's good. But to start really headed into what was zoned, even if it was 50 years ago, as an industrial park for the development of jobs or boat storage in Laconia, I don't know. I feel that, you know, in this zone, we want to be careful that we're not disallowing any development of a like type, which is what it was designed for.
Yeah, I think this is also the last lot even in this area, right? I think on Lexington and Primrose, there's nothing else.
I think it's the only vacant lot, yes.
Yeah, and Laconia really doesn't have much by way of industrial left, so. As I said, we're trying to do something that's sensitive to and we're trying to work our way around it, not interfere with it, you know. And we're definitely, no matter what we do, we're never gonna catch up with what the uphill
already been
is
done.
doing. I mean, the size of that building is, I think, what, 80, well, it's over 50,000 square feet just on itself. And then the parking lot, I think, is over 100,000 square feet, which is dumping through. But I don't see it as affecting us adversely, but that's where the impact is coming from to the land. It's not gonna be from the small project we wanna do.
I mean, I think that we are in a situation here in the city where we need to look for these kinds of small parcels that we can use to store water, to prevent flooding, et cetera, so, and, you know, to press my luck, suppose you were to decide to carry that easement line, what about planting some trees back there?
Oh, way back? Way back is all treed already. That's
Right,
all,
right.
there's really nothing to, it's all, they just logged, what is it, Brock's, I think, that owns the property? Brock's just logged everything beyond it, and everything that's on the property we're buying is all treed now. It's
Okay.
all fully natural.
Okay.
As I said, I have no interest in doing anything, so I have no problem with restricting it and saying that we'll, you know, carry that line straight. And that keeps the flow, as you said, that's coming from Smith Tube already, that's sort of engineered to go through there.
Right.
That's perfectly fine with me. I just didn't want to come too much further forward, because there is a little bit of solid land left, and, you know, as I said, we're already doing a fairly small amount of use for what's a pretty good-sized lot, you know. In the old days, like Viant, which is down below, had a big section of wetland in it that they actually got filled, and then that's why they gave the land out and back to, you know, compensate. We're not even trying to disturb what's there. I mean, as I said, I'm coming into retirement, so I've got to keep this in a budget that I can afford or justify it, you know, so it's, and my motivation here, this is really not what most developers would even do, and I don't consider myself a developer. I'm doing it for my own personal use, because most people don't even want to develop a site that's less than 20,000 square feet, because the cost per square foot just gets kind of out of control. So for me, my motivation is I live nearby, And I'm trying to get where I can ride my bike to work and go back and forth during the day, because I want to be more casual as you know, who knows when you can retire today, you know?
Right.
75, 85, you know, money isn't gonna go as far, but, so that's our.
95, working 9 to 5.
Exactly.
So, but that's our motivation, is just to put you know, try to get something that's feasible for the site, fits in, works around the wetland that's there. You know, as I said, if I can offer some space to some small contractors that need a place to park a truck, I mean, things like that, which I know are important. You know, and have a place for keep my manufacturing going until I get totally tired of it, and then make it into rental for down the road, but.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Do you have any plan for snow removal or storage on the property?
Well, it's gonna go wherever
Snow goes.
the snow can, you know, we can put it.
I would just suggest that maybe, like, especially the long driveway, that you plow it to the left side, and that would at least keep it a little bit away from
Oh, sure,
the,
yeah,
any, the wetlands.
yeah, that's not a problem.
So on the western side, the western
Yeah, to
side
the
of
Sure,
west,
if you
the
say
driveway.
so.
Yeah,
The left side is I'm looking at it.
to the upside, yeah, it's okay.
Let's get the
Yeah,
big north mark right there.
yeah, so to the west, yeah.
Okay,
That would just be my suggestion.
Mhm.
okay. Anybody have any other questions? Stacy?
You had mentioned outside storage. Where on here would that be?
Be by it'd be by where the cold storage building is. That's
That's the-
assuming that actually gets built, I mean, the parking area.
One
That's
behind.
the 551?
No, that would be out here. So this is an area where it would be open gravel parking, and this is where the storage building would be. If this doesn't get built, this will just be a place.
I'm sorry. I thought that was the building.
Oh, no.
Got you.
No, this is the building, a
Oh,
little
Same
tiny.
thing, yeah.
I thought you were doing
And
this.
we were gonna just, you know, we were just gonna have like footings.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not actually gonna even fill, you know, we're gonna just put the wall in and then a pad to the building, so we're not gonna interfere with the.
But it would have a roof and
Oh,
everything.
yeah, no, no roof,
So,
it'd be like a regular.
are you
used
doing
store type.
gutters?
It'd probably be a shed roof, you know, typical metal, like used store type building with, you know, pitched roof.
Pitch the roof toward the west? Where
I'd
the,
probably pitch it towards the back, only because if you pitch it towards the front, then you're gonna have water and ice building up in front of the doors.
no, pitch it, so you're gonna pitch it toward the north, or you're gonna pitch it toward the west?
Just gonna pitch it towards the
Towards the
wetlands.
east,
To
actually.
the east,
He's gonna
Yeah.
pitch it towards the
where it
wetlands,
flows down into
This
the
is
water.
building.
Right,
which,
which is where it's all gonna go anyway.
Right.
I thought this was. the
Instead of
building.
fighting your own
That's
building.
exactly
Exactly.
our,
Well-
yep, this is the
Okay,
building, this is the
okay.
parking lot, the
Okay.
gravel parking lot.
the
We're
only,
all reading that wrong.
the only issue with doing it that way is a tremendous amount of water can come off a very small amount of roof. And so you're really going to be impacting the soils and their ability to absorb. So I'm just thinking you might end up, if you don't do something like a French drain or infiltration drains or something around the base of that
Mhm.
building on the east, and you could be
Yeah, I wouldn't have it
causing an
just, I wouldn't have
erosion.
it just dump onto raw soil where it would then create an erosion. So we could throw in stone, you know, around the bottom to catch the impact and then disperse it.
Depending on how big this building is, you might want to consider something a little bit more engineered. It's hard to tell just by looking at that.
Mhm.
In order to, because, like, as I said, I'm not gonna, and I'll quote it wrong, but 1 inch of rain can generate a huge amount of roof runoff. And that can create real erosion problems.
I'm sure that when he went to, pull a permit to build it, he'd have to have, more structured plans than just a slab in a building.
I'm sure he will too, but I'm mentioning it tonight as a
Yep, it's a good
consideration,
idea.
so it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
get lost in the, and the other thing is, I'm looking at the map, and I think, I could be wrong, because this map isn't very exact, but I'm wondering if this, where it says sewer and drainage easement, if that's not abutting Ahern Park.
No.
I'm just
That's
looking at this map, and it doesn't, it's
think
not
it's-
quite clear.
No, in the back is, well, it's Brock's property is directly back. You gotta go quite a bit further back to get into Ahern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling like it's that section of woods where
You know
that
where the
beaver
cell,
barn
you know where the
was.
cell tower is?
Be a little quick.
You know where the cell tower is?
Yeah.
Right in that area? There's a cell tower that's a few hundred feet off the
So
highway.
Okay.
this is the back parking lot for,
Yeah.
Smith Tube is, yeah, right here.
Okay.
And this is where they have that storage, but that's at the back of
Sure.
the property, but this is Brock's.
That's why I'm getting confused, just because that green area is
Oh,
Ahern
okay.
Park.
Yeah,
That's
so
why I'm
we're-
confused.
Right, and you can see we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I
So,
know.
yeah,
I just
okay.
didn't know if the line
Right,
was
right.
not accurate. Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So can I just comment, though? I'm on planning board, and there are a couple of members that have really started to question gutters.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may, just so it's in the back of your mind,
Yep.
they may, because it's so close to the wetland, they may wanna say, can we look at a gutter plan or some
I
sort
don't
of.
know if we, I mean, I have no problem, I would say with, like she's, said, you know, French drains or something around the bottom to collect.
Or
I
like
don't know if we want gutters,
plantings
because
or-
gutters freeze up and then you end up with, you know, ice dams and living in New England, I've had ice yay thick on my house, there's chainsaws out there to cut them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm glad that they can say no global warming, but at least I haven't had to deal with it for like the last 10 years, so.
But they are gonna look at that and want.
Oh, yeah, no, we, yeah,
something.
we would make sure that if we put a building in, that yes, we would look at a way to collect the water. Yeah, we're not gonna let the water
Like
just
even
pour
a
off.
stone drip or plantings or just
Right.
something to,
Mhm.
put up a barrier.
Yeah, something so
between
it's
the
coming down, hitting the ground, something to stop it from just racing off, yeah, or eating a path into the soil,
Right.
sure, yeah. That's easy enough to do.
Any other questions? Okay, so does Mr. Gallagher have to prepare a conditional use permit, or?
He needs to do a site plan review, which will include the CUP. If you want to see it again, I mean, we can do that. Or you could list out some recommendations tonight, and we'll just carry them forward through the site plan process, whichever you want to do. I mean, this is not an engineered drawing by any means, and he's going to need to produce one for the site plan, but, you know, I'm taking a few notes, and we'll certainly get as much of this incorporated as we can.
Thank you for your patience with my questions. I
Oh, no,
appreciate
no
that.
problem. I mean, we're hoping to get to the planning board meeting for the June meeting, if we can get everything done. We've been working on this for quite a while, but getting anybody to do anything has been brutal. In fact, they showed up to do all the wetland mapping the day we had the 14-inch snowstorm. So,
Oh, jeez.
you know, they couldn't do it the day before when they could walk through this much snow. They had to do it when you're walking through 18 inches.
Well, they had tall guys.
Yeah.
Big boots.
Okay, so I guess what we do is comment on this conceptually, and then when you get a package ready to, you know, before you go to the planning board, come and we'll take another look at it.
Oh, we can do that. It's just like to keep everything moving though, so I'd like to
Right.
do it in such a fashion that we can,
When you put in the application and you have the plans, it'll kick off the planning process, which, since you need a CUP, it would come here
okay,
automatically.
okay.
Okay.
Unless you are happy with what you got now, but doesn't sound like you are, so that's fine, and that's fine.
Okay, so we don't need to take a vote on it. We've given you our comments.
Yeah, we could, if you need a copy of our comments, we can give those to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sheena's,
yes, so we'll get
Yeah.
that
Just
too.
one culvert being done, right?
The one,
By the crossing?
Well, and then.
yeah, the
by
crossing
road
getting out
also.
back, and then there's a culvert along the street,
There's one
where the
along
curb,
the
where the
street.
driveway curb cuts out.
There's one here.
Well, that's existing, right?
Well, there's no
That was a
culvert,
drainage
it's
swale
just
now.
a,
There's no curb
it's
cuts
just a
yet.
drainage ditch.
That'll get filled in.
Is there a, on Smith Tube, is there a culvert?
They have pipes dumping onto the property, but there's no culvert along that.
on
That's all just
Lexington.
open swale. It's just
Yeah.
open man-made swale.
Okay, well, I guess my comment would be if there are culverts that you're gonna match up size to size along Lexington.
There's a culvert coming down to here,
Right,
and then, well, we're trying to avoid disrupting any more than possible, so we're gonna be open, and then and this would match, this would be sized according to this.
right.
And then we only have the culverts right here.
Right.
And there's no culvert along here, this is just open,
Just a swale.
open pitch, yeah.
Okay,
Ditch line.
yeah, so if you match, the two
Right.
culvert sizes, so we don't,
Oh, yeah,
Well-
exactly.
I have a question on that, though, Mr. Chair. Is it an undersized culvert to begin with?
There's-
I don't know. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
This is a pretty good size. I don't remember what it is, but it's a fair-sized pipe coming through.
Okay.
But
well,
they're
no-
enclosed all the way, from that edge of Smith Tube, it's enclosed all the way to the other side of Primrose.
Okay.
Because I just, okay.
Any other comments? Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
great, we appreciate it. Now, the
All
big
right.
thing is we
Very
want
much.
to,
Have a good night.
Thanks for your patience.
no problem, thanks very much.
Do you want this back? You want this back, sir?
You don't need it.
No, yeah.
Good, thank you. Keep it.
That's okay.
Good. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Good evening,
night.
thank you.
Yep.
Drive safe.
Okay, so do we have the minutes from the previous meeting?
I don't know that you'd be able to view them from this
You can't.
agenda
Okay.
because we had all the difficulties.
Right, okay.
So I can go ahead and bring them to the next meeting if you'd like to do it that way.
That's good.
We still haven't had word back from Civic Plus as to what is happening with this.
Okay,
Hopefully we'll have it resolved in the next week.
okay.
Mr. Chair, will we have further discussion on what we just saw or not? Because I just had a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
I just didn't know. Dean, your face was telling a story, and I don't know what I'm not sure what that story was, if it was like, oh, won't they be quiet, or what's going on?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of record, and as Mike said, it's in the industrial park, and,
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. And the existing wetland that they have mapped is largely been created by runoff from the other parking lot
Oh.
element with a backhoe, yeah, and just get it down there. When we were looking at the the newer building that was just built behind the gas station, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, 2.5 years ago. I mean, the drainage ditch out there is the water's flowing, but on either side of it is just a mound of dirt. I mean, they just took a backhoe, dug a ditch and put the dirt on either side, and it's eroded down a little bit over the years, but that's what it was. So, I mean, it's strictly a man-made situation. Now, at this point in time, don't get me wrong, it's a wetland. I mean, it's been there for 50 years or 45 years or whatever these various elements have been, and, there's cat o' nine tails, and there's ferns, and there's,
Phragmites.
yeah,
There used to
everything.
be beavers back there too?
I don't know,
I
but,
thought there
yeah,
was like a
probably,
pond back
I'm
there.
sure.
Yeah.
So, and you really can't do anything on this piece of land without getting a CUP. I mean, but that's why we have the CUP process. So, I mean, I just,
and there's no concern of street side either, when we were talking about the culverts, when Stacy mentioned, oh, there's more than one culvert, there's some on the street, there's no concern about any of that.
not directly. I mean, when he gets to the point of, he has an engineered plan, DPW will look at what sizing
Okay.
culvert that they're gonna put in, and whether it's big enough or not, I mean, they'll make the recommendation of,
Okay.
okay, that's the right size, or maybe you need to go up you know, if they propose a 15-inch, maybe they say you gotta put in an 18-inch. I don't know,
Well,
but we certainly
yeah.
would have that review
Yeah.
as part of the site plan, and also his driveway permit, he's gonna need,
Ha-
you know, all that stuff.
So that's the last lot. So you're now at maximum. There's no concern of build out and increased drainage and everything at this point, because there's nothing else
Well,
up to
I
build
mean,
out there.
there is a little bit, because this is the last vacant lot, but there are 2 or 3 lots that have developable land on them that whoever owns the property now could expand either building and/or parking lot. So, I mean, yes, there could be, some additional drainage that needs to be accounted for, you know. But again, we would do a site plan for all of those things, and we, you know, if they have to do a retention pond on their site to handle that, or whatever they gotta do, they're gonna, you know, it's 2023, and we've learned a lot in the 50 years, and, you know, the new standards apply to anything that's being done new.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I think, you know, to that end, that it's 2023, and if the property that is to the east of his property has a conservation easement, whatever that means, or a conservation land, or however, can we look at what that conservation, or whatever it is,
Yep.
and then ask him, Gallagher, to apply the same language to his abutting parcel, and then see if the property to the east of Mr. Gallagher's neighbor, we can do it again, so that we can create a conservation corridor, so that, you know, because we're, yes, this
Yeah.
is, you know, supposed,
The property to the east is pretty well maxed out in terms of,
which one is that?
I don't know, whatever company he said, but
Brock's.
the property to the east,
Thought he said Brock's, yeah.
yeah, or
No,
So
it's,
it's, you know,
it's
so
another
it's-
building.
yeah.
There's another building, and then there's the gas
The
station.
tubing company. They're-
Smith, too.
Yeah, I mean,
They're big.
there's very little left on that property that could be developed.
Okay, so
that
I guess-
there's probably not any ability to continue a conservation area of whatever kind it is to go east of the Gallagher property. But to the north, there's the Brock's property, which is undeveloped. Could be, you know,
That's 50 acres, isn't
yeah,
it?
at least. It's probably 125.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was thinking that if we could take his property, the next guy's, another one,
Thank you.
and have them all connected to this, and find out what is the actual classification of that Phragmites piece. Is it a conservation easement? Is it just a,
Yep, we can do that research.
Yeah.
and so if we could put together that kind of a designation, so that water has a place, a way to go, so that it winds up where it's supposed to wind up.
So it's all Ahern Park, right behind them.
I know, but what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to get the water off his property to the next property, to the next property, down to 106.
Why do you want it there?
Because that's where it's flowing anyway.
But it also might flow back into
Yeah,
here.
what?
I think she's looking,
I'm not sure what you're looking at, but it is not Ahern State Park.
Yep.
So the piece of land that we're looking at is this little one right here.
she's got it highlighted.
Okay. Everything that's in red, with the exception of right here, this area here, that's in red, there are a couple of small parcels off of here, is owned by Brock's. The excavation, paving, / whatever else they do, yeah, that
That's not
is,
right.
the Ahern is that line right there.
Oh, I thought this green was
No,
Ahern.
no,
Oh.
that land is Brock's land.
Okay.
But it's
So
kind
if
of
we could
wetland,
go,
right?
if we could go to wherever he is, where is he? He's
Yeah,
over-
that's a
over
piece,
there.
huh?
So if we could go from there down and even get Brock's to see if they would play in the game. I mean, he's certainly got plenty of room off 106 to get into his property.
Sunset
and if he
Rock.
cuts off,
Well,
you
it's
know.
all, it's pretty much wetlands back there.
In that area it is, yes.
But it would be a way to, you know, create this corridor.
Understood. I have talked with the guy at the Brock's that's in charge of their development. He has been cooperative on other matters, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, I think in terms of a wildlife corridor, it goes right over to Tardif.
Right, yes, it does.
So it's, you know,
Right across the road.
it's a good, anyway. Okay,
We can check on that. We certainly can raise the issue.
okay, so,
So what we would, when we work with the applicant on their site plan, we're gonna talk to them about the gutters treatment and the drip edge treatment. And it's not just the building that's out back, it's also the front building as well. He's gonna have,
Yeah.
Snow storage.
yeah, and snow storage, yeah. He's gonna have roof drainage from the front building as well, which all needs to be captured somehow and,
dealt with.
yep.
Right. And if you could also ask him if he would be willing to cut off that back
Yeah,
chunk
and
of
the
his
rear,
land.
and the rear area reserved for
Willing.
And then,
however it
You
gets designated, yep. Yeah, we'll look at the other property
and then see how we can cobble together this corridor.
Yep,
Because as long as Brock doesn't do anything, it's great.
Oh, there's always houses.
there always is.
Yeah, so, okay. So, other business, anybody have any other business? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll look at that later.
Did you wanna do the science stuff?
Yeah, in a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that.
Yeah,
Okay, so, just for the people that are not in our cohort, we have developed the signs that are gonna go on the WOW tour. So I'll let you look at those. We're set, those QR codes are live, you can.
Got it out.
Yeah, you
That's
can,
really a thing.
you can look at them with your phone and get some information.
well, you know, let's be clear here. Lisa and Deb and another Lisa were the ones who put those together.
Cool.
Team members on the cohort put the verbiage together, they straightened it out, they got the pictures. We're getting prices.
The sign shop up on,
Frank Bean.
Frank Bean Road, I should know it, I turn on it every day.
Cool.
Is probably going to do the printing for us. They have given me an estimate of $105 per sign. So, but I haven't seen the sign yet. I mean, I need a visual picture. So, but they're very nice. They're great to work with. They actually lent us some graffiti remover to try on the Boy Scout sign. It's been raining. I haven't tried it yet, but
Cool.
yeah. So that's coming right along. We have a presentation to do to the rest of the cohort groups on April 20th. So we'll have a PowerPoint presentation. You guys get interested in that, we can show it to you.
Perfect.
So,
Cool.
it's a good project. For the month of May, we have the Belknap Mill, we have a room in the mill reserved for a clean water education, whatever you wanna call it, symposium. Let's use that word, that's a good word.
It's a big word.
We have 7 different agencies. We have the Winnipesaukee Watershed, Winnisquam Watershed, Loon Preservation Society,
New Hampshire Lakes,
New Hampshire Lakes,
CCD.
BCCD, Laconia Conservation. So they're each gonna have a display board in that art room that is to the left as you go in on the first floor. They will be there for the month. May 4th is our open house for that, from 4 to 7, I think.
4 to 7.
Everyone's invited, please come.
And the purpose of it is to educate the public as to conservation efforts that are going on in this area, in the Lakes region, to provide opportunities for people to volunteer on groups, and opportunities for people to
Support them.
financially support them, so. Anyway, so the Mill's gonna do some publicity. We're gonna try to get actually, we better get this going pretty soon. See if we can get the Congress people from the state to come and, bring it to a higher
We'll
level.
invite them.
What?
We'll invite them.
Yeah, invite them, see if we can get them to come and see what we do here
So I
in the wilds.
I have a question for the cohort members here tonight. I'm watching Stacy pour over that, and I don't know, do we want to accept
awesome.
edits, changes?
Sure, I mean,
Oh,
we're open
we
to
can
anything.
do changes?
Yeah, do you need to change something?
Is there any way we could just add a word?
Is it a big word or a little?
No, it's a very tiny word, but
Seriously, what we did is we looked at the signs that were on the WOW trail already. We're trying to keep the size to about that.
What's her
it's just 2 letters.
What's her word? What's her word?
addition?
The word is 2,
2, like in
And
W with their 2
T-O.
O's.
and,
T-O.
I've lost.
Shall we fess up? that
No,
It
There's no room for it?
it wasn't AI.
wasn't AI?
It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
One of them might have been, but it wasn't most of them.
Oh, okay, good. Because the first iteration, I was like, what?
There's some people that objected
there it
to
is.
AI.
What can we do protect pollinators?
Oh,
2,
So it's just what can we do to
Yep.
right.
protect?
Yep.
Okay, so.
Right on the side,
write
that
it
would be
there.
fine.
Right
Want me to put it in?
Yeah.
Not here.
No,
But this
no,
is great.
no.
Well, I meant about AI.
So the
I love it.
Wasn't me. I
The
didn't either.
pictures,
Good.
and you know what's funny is your invasive plant species thing. I just got the biggest idea just from reading it. I was like, we should find out who does eat bittersweet. Introduce them.
They eat the seeds, that's
do.
about all.
birds eat
And then they,
the bittersweet
Yeah.
seeds
Are they?
and poop them.
and then they take them to other
They take
spots.
'em
I think we
other
need
spots.
a hunter to stand there with a rifle and shoot those birds.
Oh,
Be careful what you introduce to the environment, because 50 years later, your successors will be saying, those damn people that brought in the,
why do we have prairie dogs here
We,
anyways?
like purple strife, loosestrife, or any of those things. Oh,
Burning
that's a-
bush.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a pretty plant. Let's bring that in. Yeah.
Sadly, a lot of the invasives were brought in by the USDA for soil stabilization. It's like,
Well, they do a good job.
they do.
That bittersweet is all through that soil. So Bob Harrington and I also attended a Parks and Rec training for invasives last week, down at Bartlett Beach. Yep. what's his name?
Tyson
Tyson
Morrell.
Morrell, who was here doing a presentation to us. He came and he filled in Amy and her crew on how to approach knotweed and bittersweet. And we actually, so there was a nice patch of it right down there at Bartlett Beach, and we all went to, it was that really cold day, but it was gorgeous down there. And we did some pulling and some cutting, and yeah,
Good, thank you.
it was great. It was good information. And actually, knotweed when it's dead is kind of fun to play with. It's like bamboo. I mean, it's easy to pull out, and just saying, compared to the bittersweet.
Yeah, compared to the bittersweet, that's right, but
So,
one little leaf, if you miss a leaf of the,
I mean, Tyson said, it's the kind of thing you just have to, you pull it out, you cut it down, and you come back. You just have to keep coming back and keep working it and working it and working it. And, if you're persistent enough, then then you'll get it. Probably the biggest challenge right now is where to put it once you've taken it out. Because if it's dead, knotweed like we were dealing with, which is kind of like a bamboo, that's fine. You can bag that up and you can take that to the dump. Bittersweet, they won't even touch until it's been put in a bag and dried out, killed for, a certain amount of time. And so, I mean, it's a kind of a real predicament, because Amy was like, all right, we've got to bag this bittersweet and then put it out by the garage for a certain amount of time. It is a problem, because I guess they're not burning. They won't burn the invasives
Really?
anymore.
Because I think the spores all go and plant themselves.
I don't know about,
they?
I don't,
Not if there aren't any flowers.
yeah, I don't know about that, but he said the stump dump doesn't burn them anymore.
Stump dump, what do you call that, up in the weirs?
Yeah.
Hilliard Road, yeah.
They used to, I thought, had a,
You can't bring a stump in there, it's just a wood dump.
I thought they had a.
But you used to be
pad.
able to take invasive species.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Huh.
Interesting, no,
So
didn't
it's a
know
problem,
that.
and actually, technically, if you have it bagged, and you've got it on your truck to take to the
They don't
parking
wanna
lot
see
to
the
dry
bag.
it out, they don't want you, they what?
They don't wanna see the bag in the burn pile.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, even to bag it and put it on your truck and take it somewhere to let it dry out in that
It's
bag,
illegal.
is technically you're transporting it,
Yep, I got it.
yeah, so.
Wow, ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. Anyway, but it was good. It was a good afternoon.
Good. He's a good presenter.
Yep. And he digs right in. And Bob, let me tell you, Bob was right in there too. I was like,
Good on him.
That's awesome.
we had to give him a hat. We gave him Amy's hat because it was really cold.
Oh.
But
I got one last thing that I see as I drive up and down the boulevard every day now, is right at the bottom of White Oaks Road, but not really on White Oaks, really, it's Padula Construction, and they're right on the water, and right down by his dock, within the 33 feet, is his,
Porta potty.
porta potty. Just recognize that is sitting right behind that fence, and really makes me think of you when I drive by. I know what the answer is.
I'll take it. I'll be the porta potty and the silt sock lady any day.
So I just recognize that that's one of the tight ones.
Okay, so any news from the planning board?
I don't know what you want to do now. I brought it up last night about the size of the wetlands. I did not realize this. I thought this got changed years ago. I don't know how it got through you guys. The ordinance change, it was just done. So
We didn't hear about it.
What are you talking about?
We didn't hear about it.
how properties, I'm gonna say it wrong because I don't speak well, but he's gonna let me keep rambling on. So properties do not have to worry about buffers when the wetland is less than 3,000 square feet.
Correct.
So that just got changed in 21?
21.
So, to go in front of city council now and say, no, you screwed up, it's supposed to be functions and values, I think that's just going to, it's not going to look good.
It got changed, at what level? I'm confused.
We changed the ordinance.
Okay.
So,
So apparently you guys weren't
Who's
told.
we, like the
No, no, no,
council
no,
or
no,
the
no.
planning board?
You had several meetings
Yeah.
with Taylor, 3 or 4 of them, I was here, where you discussed updating the wetland ordinance, which included the change in the buffers. And I know you had considerable discussion over that, the aspect of buffer or no buffer, what size wetland,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera. So, and I know it was discussed at length at this body. But, but it's not every single wetland that's smaller than 3,000. It's wetlands that are not connected to anything else, so,
That were man-made more than,
well,
like
so,
vernal,
That's what we
like vernal
talked about.
pools.
no, vernal pools are still,
No, no,
regardless
no,
of
I mean,
size.
but if we look at a 3,000, I have a 3,000 square foot wetland. There's no buffer, right? There's no buffer. But, you know, it's the same issue that we faced, and maybe this is the basis for going back to them and saying we need to change, going back to the city council and saying we need to change it. It's what happened with Homestead's project. Remember, he came and he said, this is a wetland,
Yep.
and he had his wetland scientist say, this is the wetland, and we said, you know, and he mistakenly said, oh, no, it's not a wetland, it's a vernal pool.
Yeah.
And then we said, we said that his wetland scientist needed to look at it as a vernal pool. She looked at it as a vernal pool and said, it's a vernal pool. So I think, you know, did we make a mistake? Today, I would say we made a mistake.
Yes,
But that doesn't mean that we should continue down that road because we made a mistake and we're too embarrassed to go and admit it.
But if you have a 50-foot vernal pool, it is still under your jurisdiction and you still have a buffer.
Right.
I mean, that, the vernal pool was not,
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that in Holmesy's case, it was, here is the wetland, and it was defined by a wetland scientist, and subsequent investigation showed that it was a vernal pool. So I come in and I say, I got this small, you know, wet area in my yard, and it's less than 3,000, so I don't need to worry about a buffer, right? Right, but,
well, no, wait a minute. But you still need to delineate the wetland.
oh, I understand that.
And in the process of a soil scientist delineating the wetland, regardless of size, you would hope that they would also determine whether it's a vernal pool or not. Now, I realize a lot of that is dependent upon time of year of the wetland being delineated.
Right.
But, you know,
So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not embarrassed to go and say I made a mistake. I would rather say I made a mistake and try to get the issue resolved in a more scientific way, because it doesn't make any, you know, size is not the issue. It's functions and values. So if we looked at it from size only, okay. Now, we should have said functions and values, and we didn't. We made a mistake. But that's okay, as long as we're willing to say we made a mistake and to try to change that mistake.
to what? I mean, what's the change?
Okay, so the change would be, if you have a wetland that is 3,000 square feet or less, you need to do an investigation at an appropriate time of year to see if it's a vernal pool. Because vernal pools are not necessarily 75,000 square feet. They're typically smaller pockets where water accumulates, stays for a season, and then disappears.
Right.
It could be a very tiny puddle that is saving a whole bunch of properties from being flooded. That's where the function comes in.
Right.
Is it actually doing anything?
Right. So if we look at a specific time frame and evaluate it using scientific information, not just size,
Would a wetland scientist be able to tell if a small wetland was
Right.
super important?
That was exactly who I got the info from, was a scientist who said cities they must look at functions and values
Not just the
when they're
size.
dealing with their ordinance. And so I was like, I think it's size that we do.
Be careful now. Cities and towns do not have to consider function. He's suggesting that we
Right.
consider function. That's a different statement.
He said it's in the best interest.
It's in the best interest, right.
Yes.
So, I mean, and
Well, sure, his attitude is completely on the wetland side. That's who I was getting the info from.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I get it, so,
From a development,
so
No.
I think the question here is, if you want to revisit, we can revisit, okay? The question, but what I'm hearing is not necessarily,
could it be an addition?
take the vernal pool off the table, because the vernal pool is not exempt, no matter what. I mean, you're gonna apply the 100-foot buffer to a vernal pool as long as it's delineated as one, and we have learned that timing matters, and in the future, when someone's out there in August or September delineating a wetland, we're gonna say, you gotta go back in April, period. So, putting that to the side, the attempt here was to recognize that the smaller wetlands, many of which are either man-made or created because the natural flow of water gets blocked, or using as example 224 Endicott Street East that we're having a little bit of a problem with the developer right now. That little wetland he has in the middle of his property, which now does not have a buffer applied to it, is not going to do any of the things that you're talking about. And that's fine. So, and if the determination is it's not gonna do any of those things, then, okay, fine. The ordinance is fine the way it is. But, if we're gonna do a value, process, then, and that's fine too, then we have to come up with how do you determine those values? How do you, what's involved in doing that? And what is the cost of that to the property owner? If it's, it's expensive enough as it is for them to hire a soil scientist and do the delineation in addition to surveys and all that stuff. If you're gonna add, and I have no idea what the cost is, but if you're gonna add several $1,000s because they have to hire a consultant, specialized consultant A, who is gonna determine the value of this wetland, that might be a hard sell
Subjective.
to changing the ordinance with the planning board and changing the ordinance with the city council. I mean, I'm just, that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, I think that an analogous situation is when we were doing the gardens. And the gardens had the vernal pool.
Yeah,
And they came to us and they said, rather than putting 100-foot buffer around this vernal pool and carving a large chunk of our development area, would you entertain putting in, and here's a scientific article supporting this, directional.
right,
We did that.
yeah,
We did that.
right.
Because there was a scientific basis for doing it. So, you know, a guy comes in and, you know, in one sense, I don't really have, I understand the cost issue. But people are coming up here and building $500,000, $800,000 houses. I've lost some of my compassion for a couple of $1,000s, you know, in additional cost. So it's more important to me that I wrote down, I'm gonna look to see if wetland scientists are trained to do functions and values on wetlands.
Right.
If that's what they do, as a matter of course, there's no additional cost.
They,
If they have been trained to do that, you hire somebody to come in, I don't, you know, I understand that it's less than 3,000 square feet. What's the function and value of that?
And that's fine, but I mean, I also look at this from a standpoint of, and we've had this discussion about prime wetlands, and the city council in particular, but people on the planning board as well, over the years, have said, we don't want to designate anything as a prime wetland.
Well, New Hampshire isn't doing
No, well, but we were up until recently.
Just
No.
because the state's not, doesn't mean we
Right,
can't.
the state was encouraging prime wetland designation, and et cetera, and we did not, you know. Now, they're not doing prime wetlands. And I don't know the reason why, all of a sudden, not necessarily all of a sudden, but from our learning about the issue, all of a sudden, why is the state of New Hampshire saying, don't worry about prime wetlands, we're not gonna designate that anymore. We're now gonna do X, Y, and Z instead. And I don't understand it. I don't know that I need to understand it. I just know that as time goes on, whether you're looking at 20 years ago, or you're looking today, or you're looking 20 years in the future, there's this is what's in vogue right now, this is what we're going to do, and the ordinances get changed and that kind of stuff, and we move along, you know, and it's, you know.
Sheena.
So, I have a question about this. For instance, with 224 Endicott, they delineated this wetland. Spring comes around, and suddenly this wetland is much larger than it started out as. You know, is the purpose of the buffer to prevent people from building close to a wetland, or is it to accommodate for the fact that when you have a major storm event, that wetland's going to expand, and anything that you put near it, it's reasonable to believe is going to be inundated. This wetland is also going to be affected by anything that's near it. So if the buffer is removed, in this case, they did their snow storage right beside this wetland. The wetland expands, now the snow storage is in the wetland. Without a buffer to protect this thing, now we have a wetland full of sand, silt, and rocks, you know?
Which property is this?
224
that
Endicott.
doesn't mean,
Is that the three
It's,
condos?
yeah, there's 3 condexes.
That look like,
Right.
So
New construction.
This wetland does not look like it does in the delineation, because it was done at a different time of year that didn't accommodate for the fact that this thing's going to expand when it fills with more water.
And are they
there's
having it?
buildings there now where there weren't
Right,
before.
and there's impervious areas.
Right, and the nature of these things changes with time. I think it might be wise to maybe consult somebody who knows what they're talking about as far as how big these things will grow to be. how much we can believe they'll change with like a 10 or 25 or 100-year storm, and maybe create a buffer based on that, you know, per site. They're having a delineation done, it might be reasonable to say with the kind of topography on this property, you should expect this to be the reasonable buffer.
So Shane, if I could, so I don't know if we screwed up when did we look at this plan and make comment on it?
We looked at the first part when he wanted to put 2 condos on there, and then it was fine.
When he
The third
when he first started, we had the buffer, and he was held, well, I don't, he may have received a CUP to encroach somewhat in the buffer, I'm not sure, but, I mean, there was a buffer when he started the project.
So, to your point, and that's why the chair brought this up tonight with this gentleman about, what are you gonna do with that back lot? Dean has been pushing for many years, when somebody comes in, they've got 200 acres and they've got a development of 25, and he goes, what's your build-out plan? Oh, well, we don't have, you know, and Dean has been pushing, he's like, no, you really, you must have some sort of idea of what you wanna do.
That's
And they
scenic
don't-
road.
And they don't wanna do it, because they wanna do it piecemeal so they can get away with more. And that is what I would love to see us to be able to support, is Dean's vision of somehow requiring or requesting some sort of build-out vision that would accommodate, because often, what I have seen with my work when people call us is they have a house in the middle of a hill, and all of a sudden there's a five house development, and they're getting completely washed out, because that 5-house development wasn't there when their infrastructure was built, and that's what I see a lot of, so.
And to that end, Endicott Street and the gardens, that water is flowing in the same direction, and those people down on Pendleton are gonna get water. They're gonna have water in their basements, and they're gonna come to the city and they say, we never had water in our basements before. Now we have water in the basement because those guys up the hill built their stuff.
I'm going to go, I've looked a lot at that particular flowage right in there. And they have water in their basement on Ashley Drive, on the other one, because of the way the water comes down off the hill from the west side. And when you look at how, where the pour points are, the map that we got earlier for the pour points, you'll see that that stream is trying to run right through that. But, hey, 1980s, let's rock and roll, and let's build right over it. So they're not really getting all the problems from the 3 condos up above. It's coming from all the stuff that's coming down the west side, all the sand that gathers right in the bottom there. And Old Man River still wants to get to Winnipesaukee, and it goes right through those lots, of course, to get a steep hill, where of course it's gonna be down there.
So,
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Stacy a question, if
Yeah.
is that okay? Stacy, at the planning board level, do you guys sort of enforce this, no water? You can't have more water exiting after you build than existed before, are you guys enforcing that?
And I also did hear last night again, though, they looked, if conservation passed it, a lot of them I know kind of sit back a little and say, oh, well, then I guess it's
Guess we
okay.
have to get a lot
So you
tougher.
guys do have a lot of,
Yeah.
they think you're doing your due diligence, and they feel a lot more comfortable when they see that. But they're very good about,
Okay.
But I want them to look at something, and this actually happened at least once. The Conservation Commission looked at this? You gotta be kidding me. Here's a list of questions, send it back to the Conservation Commission and tell them to look at it in a different way.
well, they just look at me.
Well, and that's the, and so,
I
my,
did
my
put in
comment,
for
my
silk
co-
socks
my-
last night.
My comment, it
Thank
was
you.
directed to you to say, they really did that? Like, I'm calling a timeout.
It would
I wanted to- I'm-
undermine your,
No. This is not about undermining. This is about doing what we're supposed to do. And if we miss something, we need to be told we missed something, so that we don't miss it again.
Yep.
So as an example, I went over to Woodwinds, is that right, is that what it is?
yes.
I went over to Woodwinds. If I had seen the top, the topo map for that garage, I would have asked a lot more questions.
Well, they did do a good job last night with that. We did get a letter from an abutter, and
Yeah.
but Dean had gone out there and seen that it was level, and that they were concerned about water going into their property, but you said there was no way it could, right?
But what I'm saying is, when somebody comes here and they have a drawing like this, I want to see the topo.
Right.
Now, the topo happens to be on this one, so it was a bad example. But it's very small. So, you know, we're not perfect. And when we make a mistake, we need to be told we made a mistake and what the mistake is so we can learn from it. So if we do something and the planning board says, send it back.
Are they allowed to go
Sure.
back to
Sure.
conservation?
Sure.
Yeah.
They can table it and,
They don't have to file
Renotice
anything,
everybody.
or,
no, they could table it and ask her for
I mean, the applicant wouldn't have to repay anything.
Oh, no, no,
would
no,
they?
no, no.
Okay.
No, no.
I mean, I also think that these property owners, you know, they have to do their own due diligence too. When you're buying a piece of property and, oh, guess what, it's wet in the back, oh, but I can take care of that? No.
Well, a lot of them don't know.
Well,
Or
that's
I wanna
that's their
do.
problem then. That's the way I look at it.
They
If
expect to
Well,
be
I-
schooled.
I think I don't know if you're getting to this point, Mike, I've had somebody call me wanting me to tell them what the town's gonna approve, that before I buy
Oh, yeah.
this, what will the town approve? And the town won't tell you what they'll approve until they have a plan in front of them.
But even at the level of, can I have an Airbnb? Come on, that stuff's in the books. There's stuff there. So these people come in, the real estate agent is like, ah, yeah, everything's good. We'll put you right in the middle of the residential and we'll blow you right out with all, you, your buddy, everybody gets an Airbnb. But that's not the way the structure is.
Right.
And so they find themselves surprised that it isn't accepted. And then when they move here, well, all I have to do is change the rules and then I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily how the whole world works.
Yeah.
Sometimes that structure is there, like you're saying about your setbacks and everything like that, for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that tonight's, you know, meeting with the public, you know, we need to have more of that. We
That's the
need to.
biggest I've seen in the Conservation
Yeah.
Commission. That one,
We need
I
to.
just put that
No,
on
that's
a
not true.
record.
That's not,
No?
were you here when we talked about cutting down the pearly oak?
Oh, God, Lord, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay.
We were getting tarred and feathered, you know?
A thousand cuts will take care of it.
Really?
Burley Oak.
It's happening.
So is it easier to add on to an ordinance versus changing?
So let me make this suggestion. I only have a vague sense of what was presented to you and what you are, and you're reacting to it, and that's fine. But I don't understand what the issue, I really don't understand what the issue is. So probably it would be better for me to sit down with you and Dean and go through whatever it is that you were presented, and let's think about a way to approach this. How do we, if there's a problem, then how do we fix the problem?
If there's more problem.
If this is the idea of looking at a wetland from its function and from its importance, and that is not new. I mean, that's been around for a long time. Whether there's a renewed emphasis on that, then that's fine, you know. But I don't really understand what it is that you were presented and I don't really understand what you perceive what the problem is.
I think and you and I talked about this, I think the issue is, we have these properties, you know, all the really quote-unquote good properties have been developed. Now we have the, you know, has a little bit of this, has a little bit of that, and we gotta figure out how to make it work. And it's just like, you know, Mr. Gallagher coming in, showing us this, and, hey, would you, and you and I talked about, if he's gonna affect some of the wetlands, would you be willing to build wetlands, you know, on a different part of your site to replace those wetlands? So my concern is we're filling in these wetlands because we had these marginal properties that are left that have wetlands. And we're trying to figure out how to work, you know, how can I skirt around this when what we should be doing is looking at what's the function of that wetland and why is it important to us? Not to the developer, because I don't care about the developer. I mean, I do, but, you know, I'm concerned, this is where I live. And I need to make sure that where I live is environmentally functioning the way it's supposed to. So we have these big swaths of land that are owned by the state in one way or another, and those are really important. But if we have these smaller ones that it's, and this is a 2-acre parcel, and it's got this pond in the middle, and how am I gonna work around that pond? You know, oh, it's only a small pond, so we don't have to have a buffer. Well, maybe that small pond is really important to the overall neighborhood, and we need to look at the overall neighborhood. So that, you know, just like Mike was talking about, I think we need to have not so much focusing on this project as what's the overall neighborhood and how's it all fit together so that we don't, you know, if we think that what's happening in California with all that precipitation, or what happened in Kentucky, or the tornadoes that just went through the Midwest, if we don't think that's gonna happen here, we're missing a boat. We're missing a boat. And we need to think ahead, like I think, as an example, we need to go to the state and talk to them about doing dredging. We need to dredge the pond that is right by Lowe's, because that pond is now a marsh, and it's not gonna hold the amount of water that we need it to hold in a big storm. And we need to deal with Jewett Brook. And in dealing with Jewett Brook and Black Brook, we need to cross municipal lines, and we need to get everybody, you know, working together.
Well, and going back to Sheena, what you were saying, and you just mentioned wetlands and the size of wetlands, and if you get rid of buffers, one of the things that with the buff, by taking out the trees, what biomass trees, I think the uptake is tremendous. So by keeping a buffer intact, it is taking a lot of that water up so that you don't have the flooding that you have. And I think that was part of what you were talking about too, is if you, oh, I've got a pond in the middle, I'll just get rid of the trees and all that other stuff, and all of a sudden you have a larger pond. So I mean, that's one of the things that you and I have talked about, that is I have seen a tremendous amount of, maybe not a tremendous amount, that's an exaggeration, partly because of the weather, but a lot of trees coming down around town and stuff too.
Yeah.
Not that we have to do anything about it, but I'm just saying that's something I'm kind of watching to see what happens in the areas where I'm noticing a lot of trees are coming down.
Right. Like, I think we should go to, and this is on my list of things to do, call Wes Anderson, say, Wes, we would like to go down to the end of Water Street, and that piece of property down there where you cut all the trees down, or somebody cut all the trees down.
He did.
And the poor man's got a broken ankle, give him a break.
He got his wrist slapped by DES, so.
So we have this man, Tyson Morrill, who was willing to plant it, to plant trees in it, free of charge. Can we do it?
I don't know.
I mean,
doesn't want
so
to.
that's the question to
Tyson
Wes,
doesn't
can we do it?
Want to.
I don't know the reason why
He doesn't want
he
to.
wanted to have the trees gone, and I don't know.
Because there
afraid
were
they'll get
homeless,
cut
there were
down
homeless
again.
people down there.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was the reason, it was homeless people.
Yeah.
you know, that's like, we didn't solve the problem. We have more homeless people. We have less trees. They can't hide behind those anymore. So I think we need to, and, you know, I'm mindful that Wes is over his head trying to keep, just like you're over your head trying to keep things going. So what can we volunteers do to, you know, help?
Stop bringing up stuff.
Yeah.
I
You're
do
really
have
funny. You're really funny.
A partial answer, though, for his question as to why functions and values are suddenly being brought up. Apparently, DES is getting a ton of complaints from residents about flooding. And so it's filtered down, and they're getting swamped, and they're like, well, why don't you look at your wetland?
Yeah.
And that's when they were told that lots of tiny wetlands were being filled in. And they're trying to tell their scientists now to, you gotta educate people now a little bit on how that little puddle
Yeah.
might be more helpful than they think.
So when we did our stream restorations, the wetland scientists do functions and values on our stream restoration work. So, I mean, the wetland scientists do
Yeah.
those.
So this was just an educational webinar to bring focus, in response to, and these were places like Nashua and Dover, and they're getting flooded.
I can see it now. We start a campaign, Save Our Puddles.
Stop.
Yes, yes, yes!
Good luck with that.
Stop, stop.
Oh, good Lord.
How about, I got it, adopt a puddle.
There you go.
I got one.
So I have to go, but can I just toss out one more thing? There was a planning board member.
Oh, you're gonna drop a bomb and leave?
There's a planning board member that is convinced that there is a vernal pool across from him. I believe you're gonna go and check it out tomorrow, but he is pretty certain most of it is on city property. So if it's delineated on Lafayette Street,
Oh, okay.
so if it's delineated, then that can help get a record going of vernal pools.
And now would be the time to do it.
Right.
But the city, so the
Here.
question is, does the city have a list of wetland scientists that we could approach to do this project? Because we need the technical, you know, Brett and I can go out there and look at it, or,
We can
Well, I
listen
think
to,
Sheena would count.
we can listen to the peepers.
yeah,
Indirectly, I mean, we have the usual
suspects.
suspects that we go out and get third-party reviews from, and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah,
So, I
okay,
mean,
okay.
I mean, we
I
can,
figured the answer was yes,
yeah,
so,
I mean, we can, whether it be Du Bois and King, or whether it be
Even without me.
Bailey and Associates, or whoever, they all can,
thanks.
all
Thank
can
you.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go with Brett, and, you know, we should be, you know, there's enough precipitation, and it's been warm enough, and so, you know, we might even be able to see some salamanders or frogs, or eggs. So, okay. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Oh, wait a minute, I have one other thing. Do you have something?
No,
She's
Oh.
adjourning.
Okay, so there's no meeting on the 19th of April, no Conservation Commission meeting. There is a cohort meeting for the Conservation Commission next Wednesday, and then we have our presentation on the 20th. So we do not have a Conservation Commission meeting on the 19th,
Why don't we have one on the 19th?
because we have our cohort presentation on the 20th.
on the 12th. No, oh, the 20th. That's right, the next night.
I'm just thinking of spring that,
Well, I mean, okay, so let's rephrase it. If we have applicants that come in, or issues we need to revisit or visit, then we will have a meeting on the 19th. But unless something comes up. Okay.
move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you, everybody, for being patient.
Mike, I had a question for you.
Uh-uh.
What's happening behind the loony bin? What are those piles of dirt?
The Looney Bin has gotten approvals for a more permanent building than their tent, though they're not giving up the tent. So they're building a more permanent structure on a pad out there to be able to entertain, being what they do.
So there's gonna be a building